Okay, so this is a manual of self-improvement. This story starts first with the creation of my comic book, which I am 10 years into now, as Renata introduced. These are my three main characters. Clyde, a bunny, existentialist, no relation to me. Jenny, who's a zombie, and Carter, who is a robot from the future. But let me step back a little bit. At the risk of becoming morbid, I'm going to talk a little bit about death. This starts with the death of my father in the wonderful state of Arizona about 2 years ago. And this was kind of perfect timing because I was about 10 years into my project when he asked me these 4 words: "Are you getting precious?" So those really stuck with me, and I wanted to prove him wrong. And I wanted to prove to myself that I could finally complete this crazy, epic comic book. This is also about the many little deaths that we experience throughout this life. I'm using samsara here, the Buddhist idea of life and suffering. So here's my gal, Sylvia Plath, one of my favorite poets. I really like what Ted Hughes said about her work, how she's kind of a furniture maker. If she couldn't make a good table, she'd be happy to get a chair, maybe even a toy, or a sturdy craft. I've started to think of my work in this way of, have I built a good boat? Does it take you from point A to point B? And am I showing you something that you haven't seen before? Now here's one of my favorite directors, and I'm really a frustrated director. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce his name because it's really hard to pronounce, but I did take parts of his name to create a character that connects all 3 of the books. This is his first movie, and it's a perfect title or a perfect descriptor for this character. It's a mysterious object at noon. I don't remember his movie, but I stole it from him because I like his name, so I changed it to Apaseth, and this is my mysterious object. You could call it God, you could call it change, but it appears in all 3 stories and really connects all the disparate elements that are going on in the volumes. So let's talk about connections. I think Carl Jung has a good description here of synchronicity, the simultaneous occurrence of events which appear significantly related but have no discernible connection. Now, here's Clyde. He is trying what is called the spice for the first time. This is a way to time travel. And that Apaseth character is starting to appear in the periphery of his vision. Here's Jenny, before she's a zombie. This is her first real connection outside of her family in Eastern Europe. And what do you know? She shares a cigarette. And then my third example is with Carter, the robot. Finally, he is also sharing some kind of a smoke called a joint with a fellow robot character as the city is being destroyed and maybe built again. But then the power goes out. So what does this all mean? Well, in many ways I've lived all these scenes, and I feel like you write what you know until you write yourself into your own future. And while I tend to avoid self-analysis, you could say that I seek connection, fleeting ephemeral pleasures where I can find them, and I'm clamoring for some kind of deeper meaning in all this. But what the fuck does that all mean? How does it relate to making comic books? How does it relate to death? Well, maybe finishing this project to me is kind of like a kind of death, or as the French would say, le petit mort. It's not a huge death, but it's being precious. Being not precious means knowing when to trust your gut to tell you that the work is ready for public consumption. Now, here's an example of something I finished this summer, and there's my dad. So I lastly just want to thank Dad. I will never be able to show him this completed work, but he infuses the whole work and inspires it. So thank you, Dad. And thank you all for listening.
Wow, 10 years and a whole world. A lot of places for questions.
Yep.
All right.
All right.
Renata.
Yeah, I'm unmuted. Thanks for sharing that. It's really cool to see where you've gone with all of this. Seeing bits and pieces of it over the years has been really cool. We have sort of a piece of it in our house, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
And some on the refrigerator too. Yeah. So I'm curious about the way that you see your own life, like besides, like you were talking about existential, like more like the bigger picture stuff, and of the small pieces that I know you've infused into it throughout the years. Are there pieces that stand out to you or that feel, I don't know, like they're like, this thing in my life must get into this book and here's where it's represented, kind of thing?
No, well, I'll answer that in a sort of round, kind of from a different direction. What I noticed through the writing of the book is that while there might be some events from my life where I'm like, yeah, this absolutely needs to go in, sort of a detail thing. What I noticed after a while is how much, while I was in the process of writing, my interactions with people started sounding like scenes from the book that I had already written. So it was kind of like deja vu of a certain sort. So maybe, and maybe that's part of it. I think Lavisa brought this up one time, was like, maybe that's part of becoming more empathetic, is like, I'm learning through the process of working on this how to speak in different voices that are not just my own and my own experience, but at the same time, it's all me. I mean, I look at this thing like, for example, the middle section, which is the female character, Jenny, who becomes a zombie. I based it on my sister, but it really became me by the end. Like by the time I finished writing it, I'm like, dude, you're just still writing by yourself. Like, but maybe through that, and I still don't think I'm really answering your question right, but it's like you find the commonality between yourself and others, if that makes sense. So it keeps the work from being too solipsistic, I think. Lavisa has a question. I'm going to defer to my lovely wife here.
I have a question. Do you feel that you have somehow learned new things about yourself, or gained understanding about yourself through seeing it in the form of what you wrote or drew, like in your comic book?
Oh yes, definitely. Yeah, I feel like I'm.
I was just curious.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I had to include this line about, like, I don't like to self-analyze while I'm working, because I just like to make a bunch of work and then let other people try to figure it out. But you do have to. I mean, it's a comic book that I want people to read. It's not a painting. It's not abstract art. It is supposed to be read and understood. So I feel like my greatest challenge now is to express what I have learned about myself and about living in humanity to other people, to strangers. Yes, Jamie.
That was great. That's kind of two-part question. One is, are you going to publish this and like try to get it in stores and things like that? And then if so, what are you hoping that your readers, that your audience will take away from it?
Yes, I am hoping to publish it and actually get it into stores rather than just self-publishing. I'd like to work with a publisher if I can someday get that. And what I want people to get out of it is really what I get out of. I mean, there's this reason why I always include my favorite directors in my presentations. Is like, I've gotten such profound feelings through watching my favorite movies, that will affect me in certain ways, that aren't, that have like a resonance rather than just an obvious, like, well, from a storytelling aspect, this was a nice story. I want to hit people in the gut, and I want people to just feel something, really. If they don't completely understand it, that's fine. I don't always understand it myself, but I want people to feel something. And so I guess that's why I paint the way I do. It's why I draw comics the way I do. And also going from this to the comics that you guys have, the older comics, I just wanted to get bigger and more, more serious or something. I don't know.